Hello, everyone. So, this is an immediate follow up to my video on mania because I didn't want to. I was going to do part 2 depression, but I want to do part 1.5 shame. Because the first thing that's going to happen to you when your manic phase ends is shame. Okay. Now, I'll finish the story about my own manic phase. What happened? How did my manic phase end? How did I get out of it? How did I blah, blah, blah? Basically, I got in trouble and the police took me to a mental facility. And at that mental facility, a psychiatrist gave me Zyprexa, a pretty hardcore antipsychotic. And once I took that pill, my mind settled down. And then I could see what I'd done. Man, the first time after a manic phase when you can realize what you did is horrible. Man, it sucks. So that's the first thing you're going to have to deal with after your manic phase is the shame and the realization. Um, they let me out in 12 hours, which is insane because they knew that the psychiatrist knew that I was a bipolar type 1 person suffering from mania and that the antipsychotic would fix it. So he said, he, I assume he told the facility that they can discharge me immediately once I'm no longer showing signs of mania, and then just keep taking the Zyprexa and it won't happen again. So since I didn't commit any crimes, I just came very close to getting in trouble. But I wasn't in quite enough trouble to actually be charged with anything. So I was never charged with anything, and the police went away, and the psychiatric facility discharged me within 12 hours, which is kind of nuts looking back. Um, so there I was on my Zyprexa, sitting with all my decisions, and holy shit, did I feel horrible. Yeah. So the first thing I did was apologize to everybody. And then after that, I was just so ashamed. Holy shit. So how do you deal with that? Well, you have to realize that you know you have a disease, affliction, condition, disorder, whatever you want to call it. It's called bipolar disorder, so I'll just say it's a disorder. You have bipolar disorder. So anybody anybody who had that happen to their brain would make poor decisions. Anybody who had their brain chemistry go haywire in that way would make poor decisions. So you don't have to feel like you're a bad person because you made poor decisions during your manic phase. The best phrase I've ever heard came from one of my psychiatrists. He said, "Your disorder is not your fault, but it's your responsibility." What does that mean? Well, you didn't choose to be bipolar. It's not like somebody put the option in front of you and said, "Hey, do you want to be manic today?" And you said, "Yeah," knowing everything that came along with it. So it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to manage it. And a lot of people don't take any responsibility, and it's very frustrating. They're like, "Well, it's not my fault, so it's not my responsibility." And that's not the case. Especially because mania affects the people around you. So you have to take the responsibility for your disorder. What does that mean? Well, it means putting in work to make sure that you at least don't go crazy, don't go manic. Depression is harder to deal with. I'll talk about it in the depression section, but you know, the main thing is to take responsibility for not hurting the people around you. And that involves taking your medication, especially. But it's hard when you're depressed because you just want to feel good again. Now, looking back, what's interesting is that even though the Zyprexa ended mania, I was still hypomanic looking back. I didn't realize until a little while after, but I was still hypomanic. And one thing that happened to me was I suddenly became very religious, which is like the most opposite thing of me ever. Um, I'm very, 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 very secular. So to suddenly become a Christian was like the most unlike thing possible. Like, being a Christian is like the most opposite of my personality that you could possibly get. And yet, I thought that I had converted to Christianity. So that's another thing that can happen from mania and hypomania is religious feelings, feeling very spiritual, and that's going to manifest in different ways. For me, I got really into Gnostic Christianity, which is really cool, by the way. I thought that the Gnostics, the Gnostic Christians, Gnostic, you can read about it. I thought that they were right and that they were the real Christians and that I would restart the Gnostic church and start a new spin off of Christianity that taught the Gnostic teachings from the early Christianity version. Which, frankly, the reason why I call it hypomania is because that's not a totally ridiculous proposition. Like, yeah, I probably could do that and get a couple followers because Gnostic Christianity is really fucking cool. So I stopped being insane and I stopped hurting people around me. But I was still not myself for a while. And, you know, you can see in a bipolar chart, like, you know, it's a curve. So you peak in your mania and then you go down back into hypomania, but then you keep going down. So that's basically a quick follow up plus addition. Um, After your manic phase, you might not be depressed right away. You might still be not yourself, even with an antipsychotic. So, you know, the main thing I would recommend is to stay in touch with the mental health community, the professionals, because I wasn't in contact with any professionals except for that one psychiatrist at the hospital who gave me Zyprexa. Besides that, I wasn't talking to any therapists. I was too ashamed to tell my psychiatrist what happened, my normal psychiatrist. I didn't want to tell them what happened to me. So I just didn't talk to them for a little bit. So I wasn't getting any mental health support during this time from professionals because one, I was ashamed. Two, I was afraid that they were going to put me on something even more hardcore than Zyprexa and turn me into a zombie. And three, I just still didn't realize that I was not back to normal. So if I had gone to intensive outpatient, looking back, that hospital probably should have put me in intensive outpatient, right? Like, I come in completely insane. The police bring me. They give me one prescription and then let me go. They should have said you have to go to intensive outpatient and get care and have a care team to monitor you and make sure that you know, don't stay all fucked up. But they didn't do that. So I had no professional mental health support at all. Um, which isn't good. So try not to do that. Try to get care. Um, okay, I will stop this video and now go into. So that was the hypomania. I don't remember ever feeling normal. I might have felt normal for like a day or a couple hours. I don't remember. It turned into depression because that's what happens when you have this disorder. So next part's going to be about depression, a much darker video. So cool. Thanks.